Tucker Carlson tonight, and happy Friday. All the good stuff happens on Friday. The news stacks up and we finally get answers, and we have some tonight. After a year of research and interviews, the House Intelligence Committee has finally completed its investigation into that Russian meddling during that 2016 election you've been hearing so much about. The final report is out. It's more than 200 pages long. Here's the headline. Investigators found no evidence of collusion or coordination of any kind between the Russian government and the Donald Trump for President campaign. None. So that's bad news for the other cable channels. They probably ought to apologize for the entire last year of their programming, but obviously don't hold your breath. But to the rest of us, there is really no surprise here because there was never any evidence of collusion. It was always a fantasy. By the way, the report does not offer any evidence that the Russian government directed the hacking of the DNC's servers or John Podesta's Gmail account either. To this day, though no one ever says it, no one has ever come up with any proof that that happened, despite the fact that we're all apparently required to believe that it happened, or else we're Russian agents ourselves. But whatever. There's not a lot new about the Trump campaign in this report, but there is quite a bit about how Washington actually works. Consider former Director of National Intelligence, Jim Clapper. For years, Clapper was one of the most powerful intelligence chiefs in the world. Now he's a cable news shouter and a political activist. He's also a prolific liar. According to today's reports, in sworn testimony to Congress under oath, Clapper claimed that he never discussed the Steele dossier with anyone in the press. That's untrue. The report reveals that Clapper whispered to CNN about the Steele dossier, and months later, of course, the network hired him as a contributor. He still is one. Yesterday, Jim Comey told our friend Bret Baier that Clapper encouraged him to discuss the dossier with the president. That briefing was later used by CNN and other media outlets to justify reporting on the dossier, and so on in the circular fashion we've been watching for the last year. In other words, the whole thing was a setup from the beginning. No one ever really believed the dossier was true or cared if it was true. It was always just a tool designed to hamstring an administration that permanent Washington opposed from day one. Trump was onto this, actually, from the beginning. He couldn't really explain it, but he could smell it, which is his one great talent. And he was right. Of course, he was attacked mercilessly for suggesting the so-called intel community might not be on the level. How dare he do that, they yelped on CNN. They're public servants. They dedicated their lives to keeping you safe, blah, 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 blah. Actually, they're just people. Some of them are great people. Some of them are rotten and unethical. Some would gladly use leaks, deception, and innuendo to reverse the results of an election. Most people understand this, and that's why the phrase deep state is suddenly part of the public conversation. John Brennan is part of the reason, by the way. Brennan is the former head of the CIA, and like Jim Clapper, he's an accomplished and enthusiastic liar. Like Clapper, he's begun a second career as a political activist. Almost immediately after today's report was released, and long before he could have actually read the report, Brennan denounced the entire thing as meaningless. He then said this on Twitter directly to the president, quote, "The special counsel's findings will be comprehensive and authoritative. Stay tuned, Mr. Trump." He added an ellipsis just to make it extra ominous, which it was. Okay, so the longtime chief of a shadowy intelligence agency is warning the democratically elected president of our country that something bad is about to happen to him, apparently because John Brennan has inside knowledge the rest of us don't. But don't let that bother you. Don't get paranoid or anything. Don't buy any of those nutty conspiracy theories about the deep state. Everything is fine. Just be sure to obey the permanent government in Washington, or else goons like John Brennan will crush you. Terry Turchie is former Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI's Counterterrorism Division. Molly Hemingway is a senior editor at The Federalist, and they both join us at the top of the show tonight. First to you, Molly. What do you make of this? You read the report. What's the takeaway?
Well, it is interesting. They found that after a year of rigorous investigation, there's no actual evidence of treasonous collusion between Trump and the Russian government. That's probably not very surprising. What they did show was that there's quite a lot of collusion at the highest levels of government to cook up and propagate a narrative of Russian collusion. We'd already learned from this committee about the FISA abuse at DOJ, where they used a research document bought and paid for secretly by Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee to secure a wiretap on a Trump campaign affiliate. And then you picked up on this other thing that is interesting. James Clapper gave contradictory testimony under oath about what he was leaking to CNN. And that is interesting. The whole thing that got everything going was this briefing of President-elect Trump, supposedly about the dossier. We later learned it was only about one salacious part of the dossier.
Right.
And This was highly placed. This was well sourced. Obviously, it looks like it went to Clapper or someone close to him. And learning that this was all done, that Comey was asked to brief President-elect Trump on this dossier, and that this was done because CNN needed a news hook in order to justify writing about a dossier. That is a very interesting detail to learn, and should put a lot of the coverage that we've seen for the last 15 months in an entirely new light.
Well, I mean, Terry, you spent a lot of your life working for the federal government, a law enforcement agency that has intelligence components to it. The credibility of the agency is, I'm sure, important to you. It's important to me as an American citizen. None of this seems to help. I mean, if there's no collusion at the bottom of all of this, then all of this is starting to look very political, and that's bad for the way citizens feel about their government, isn't it?
Absolutely. And when you look at this, the real dangerous part of this, and the part that should scare every one of us, you just named them, the heads of the major intelligence and investigative agencies in the United States, the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, all of these people at the top appear to have had just one goal in mind, and that was to be anti-Trump and to make trouble for him after he became the president. I think it's really interesting that all of this idea of unmasking, for example, didn't really start up until after he became elected. And I think that everybody thought, and I think Molly and you and I would not even be sitting here today and talking had Hillary Clinton won the election and Donald Trump lost. I think this whole thing about Russian collusion would have vanished somewhere. But really, that was a shock to the system. And so something had to be done, because they had to make sure that they impugned Trump so that they could maybe be on the way to regain some sort of power again. I really think we have reached a point in America where we don't like to talk about this, and we weren't supposed to talk about it for years. But the Democratic Party is important. It's part of our two-party system. But it has gone so far to the left that you're seeing all of these kinds of practices and things going on that make you think that maybe the Democratic Party is the party that has a real problem with people who have penetrated it. Maybe the Russians have, maybe the Cubans have, maybe the Chinese have. But there's a lot of indicators here that all of these arrows keep going back in that direction, and they're up to their eyeballs in all of these things that we're told we're supposed to make Trump look bad and look like he was colluding with the Russians, which is not the case.
Right. Well, maybe they just don't believe in democracy, and so when the results don't go their way, they try to undermine them. I'm really bothered by this tweet in the larger behavior of John Brennan. I don't understand why a former CIA director would send out a tweet, in effect threatening the president and suggesting that he knows something about the Mueller investigation that the rest of us don't. It's almost designed to convince the rest of us the deep state is real.
It does almost seem like it was designed that way. It's also been a pattern for him. I don't know if you remember, about a year and 3 months ago, when Donald Trump was critical of intelligence agencies and intelligence community in general, a lot of people said, you better stop it or they will get back at you. And then shortly thereafter, this briefing occurred. It was immediately leaked to CNN, and the entire Russia narrative really got going. And this was a hysteria that has caused quite a bit of emotional and financial impact on the United States, including the setting up of a special counsel. And you know, we learned this week that James Comey did admit that he had been sharing classified information with multiple people. He claims it's not a leak when he shares classified information with people for some reason that makes sense to him, but that for the rest of us would be criminal leaking. And that this involves Comey, Clapper, Brennan's highly partisan tweets and highly threatening tweets.
They're ominous, and then they leak the transcript of the president's conversations with foreign leaders. Terry, want to end with you, since, again, you spent a lot of your life working at high levels of government. You don't seem like a conspiracy nut or a crazy person, just the opposite. I don't think that I am. But are you starting to think that there is a kind of loose conspiracy of intent among permanent bureaucrats in Washington? It seems that way.
I think there is, and I think that, unfortunately, a lot of the dogma and the ideology, Tucker, of the 1960s, where we were dealing with revolutionaries out in the street, I think a lot of that has now found its way inside government all these years later. And I know people are going to say, oh, wow, there's an old communist chaser. But that's what it looks like to me. It looks like the words that were used then are the words that are used now. People may not realize it, But if you look at the Prairie Fire ideology written by Bill Ayers and several other people back in the 1970s, the chief strategy to deal with infiltrating and then overthrowing eventually the United States government is called the resistance. And if you go into the detail of that 181 pages, if you really want to, the words come back and have a real strong meaning and a real ring, because they're everything we hear today: fascism, racism, Native American injustice.
Yeah, no, I remember.
All of these things are back, and now they're back, but the people that are using them are in a political party, I think, behind the scenes, trying to do everything they can to convert us in the direction of socialism. And our intelligence agencies that are supposed to protect us seem to be part of that now.
The baby boom took over, so none of this should surprise us. Terry, Molly, thank you both very much. Robin Bira was a regional director on Barack Obama's presidential campaign. He joins us tonight. So, Robin, I've watched the coverage of this report, and it does come from the Republican majority in the Intel Committee, but the coverage suggests an even deeper conspiracy. Are the Republicans on the Intel Committee intentionally, do you believe, covering up collusion with a foreign power in order to help Donald Trump?
Do I believe that? You know, it's tough to say. I would say that Devin Nunes, you know, he was on the transition team. He's basically a yes man for Donald Trump. It seems to me like they're engaging in willful ignorance. This seems partisan to me. My problem with it is that they specifically did not subpoena any electronic information. They didn't get any financial records. So this doesn't seem like a very complete investigation. And the rest.
So does it? But I just want to make it. I want to understand the suggestion here. So the idea is that the Republicans on the committee, on the Intel Committee, supposed to be the most responsible members of the House of Representatives, know or suspect that the campaign colluded with a hostile foreign power, but are hiding it because they love Trump or because they're Russian stooges too, or what would be the motive there?
No, Tucker. I think that it's basically, like I said, willful ignorance. I don't think that they want to find out that that happened because they want their guy to remain in power. So that's why
So they would hide treason? In the service of that, they would hide treason? Really?
I would certainly hope not. Listen, I'm a veteran of the 75th Ranger Regiment. I took an oath to defend and protect the country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I would hope that our elected representatives would not do something as treacherous as that. But the fact that they would not subpoena these people, the fact that some of these witnesses now are pleading the Fifth, I remind you that Donald Trump himself said that anybody who pleads the Fifth is likely guilty. And now, you know, they're not following, they just didn't follow.
And I would remind you that the president is not a constitutional scholar, and I think in our cooler moments we understand that that's a constitutionally guaranteed right, and it doesn't imply guilt, actually, as liberals used to remind us. But I'm wondering this. We've been at this for the entire course of Trump's term as president. This has been the focus, Russian collusion. Here you have the most comprehensive report to date says there isn't any. The Mueller investigation hasn't found any that we know of, and they leak everything, so you think we would know. So at what point can we say, let's move on to, like, fixing the problems of the country, like the middle class is dying, no longer the majority. 60,000 people died of drug ODs last year. Like, do we get to move on to that, or do we wallow in this crap forever? What do you think?
Tucker, I hope to God we move on from this. We've been talking about it forever. I would love for this to draw to a conclusion. But as I said, protecting our way of democracy is of paramount importance. How much time did we spend investigating Hillary Clinton's emails? It was like 17 investigations. I just want this one
by the way,
investigation
just to be clear, I wasn't exactly leading the charge on that either. I just think at some point, let me just ask you really quickly, because no one ever asked this. And it's central. When are we going to see evidence that the Russian government hacked the DNC servers, which were never, as you know, never examined by the U.S. government in any way? There's no actual evidence of that I've seen. We all assume it's true. Whenever I raise this question, it's like, you're working for Putin. But it's a real question. Are we ever going to see evidence of that?
You know, that's a very fair question. I want to know the answer. I want to know the answer to that question just as well as you do. I'm giving the DNC side eye on that myself. I question it. It doesn't make sense to me, and I want answers. Americans do deserve answers on that from the DNC specifically. So that's a very fair question.
It's too much lying.
Like I said,
it's like asking,
want the Senate.
Are we sure Assad used chemical weapons? Shut up, they explained. It's like, no, these are real questions. Thank you for being honest about that.
They are real questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Robin, thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you so much, Tucker. You too.
Well, Joy Reid's got a theory about what happened to her blog. Unseen saboteurs came in the dark of night, probably with Russian accents, and wrote things that she'd never seen before. She's now got the FBI investigating it. Not a single person believes she's telling the truth, because she's not. So the question is, can NBC survive yet another scandal? Also, the caravan is at the border. Deputy Director of ICE is here, and we'll talk to a Univision anchor about that. Univision has an embedded reporter with the caravan, so we've got an inside take on it. We'll be right back.
Tucker Carlson is brought to you by non-drowsy 24-hour Claritin. Live Claritin Clear.
Feel the clarity of non-drowsy Claritin 24-hour relief when allergies occur. Day after day after day. Because life should have more wishes and less worries. Feel the clarity and live Claritin Clear.
Do you need the most trusted battery in your noise-canceling headphones? Maybe not. Maybe you could trust you won't be next to a loud eater. Or you could just trust Duracell.
Shrimp fans, this one's for you. It's Red Lobster's new Create Your Own Shrimp Trios. Pick 3 of 9 craveable creations for just $15.99. You can enjoy the classics you love, along with new creations like savory crab-topped shrimp, decadent Parmesan truffle shrimp scampi, and creamy shrimp and lobster pasta. Your perfect shrimp plate is just waiting to be discovered, but shrimp trios won't last, so get to Red Lobster today. And get your Red Lobster fix with our weekday lunch starting at $7.99.
Get fit for summer with the Bowflex Max Trainer, a 14-minute total body workout combining the low-impact motion of an elliptical with the calorie-burning power of a stepper, so you can burn up to 2.5 times the calories and get results like he did, and she did, and he did. Get summer fit and save up to $350, including free shipping. Plus, receive a free one-on-one training session and personalized workout plan. Order now at TryMaxNow.com.
For every home project, HomeAdvisor finds trusted local pros. For every pro, you can read customer reviews. And for everybody's busy schedule, you can book appointments online. For every project, you have HomeAdvisor. Go to HomeAdvisor.com.
Nothing says spring like fresh flowers, so let's promote our spring travel deal on ChoiceHotels.com like this. Earn 1 free night when you stay just twice this spring.
Allergies.
Or, bada book, bada boom.
Book now at ChoiceHotels.com.
Fox News Channel on Sirius XM. Your favorite shows on Channel 114. Plus, every story, every 15 minutes. Fox News headlines 24/7 at Channel 115.
Locked into an expensive internet and phone contract? That's bad for business. Spectrum Business is good for business because there are no contracts and no hidden fees or added taxes either. And Spectrum Business will even buy out your existing contract up to $500. And that's good for your business. Get faster internet and advanced voice from Spectrum Business with no contracts. Call 877-509-4352 and switch today.
She wants to restore the American dream. Jenna Powell. Here, generations of Jenna Powell's family farmed the land. Here, Jenna Powell worshipped beside her neighbors. Here, Jenna Powell started her own company and grew it into a local success story. Powell will fight the establishment and bring jobs back by cutting taxes and reducing regulations and downsize government so we have more liberty. Jenna Powell. Endorsed pro-life champion, faith and family conservative. Jenna Powell for state representative.
Joy Reid is still employed at NBC apparently, but neither she nor the network are feeling much joy. Instead of apologizing for her blog posts, which were pretty embarrassing, she's pushing the ludicrous claim that she was hacked by unknown saboteurs. We couldn't even find anyone to defend Joy Reid, and we tried, trust me, because absolutely nobody believes her. The question is, where does NBC go from here? Larry O'Connor is a radio host and opinion editor at the Washington Times and a very astute observer of the media scene. So this is, look, I don't want to pile on Joy Reid. As I said last night, I kind of feel bad, actually, for Joy Reid.
And it's not really about Joy Reid anymore. It's about NBC News.
It's about NBC News. So they signed on to yet another lie. There's a litany of them they've been telling over there. How long before their shareholders or Comcast say, who's running this place?
Yeah, in any other business, you'd think that that's exactly what would happen. The CEO picks up the phone and says, guys, I got all these other divisions.
Right,
they got
exactly.
their act together. What's wrong with you? And there is a litany of issues over there now, from defending Mark Halperin when he had his issues, to Matt Lauer when he had his issues, and now Tom Brokaw is in the news. We don't know where that's going to go. But Joy Reid is a very interesting case, because a week ago, the only problem was that she had some, homophobic, or at least homophobic adjacent comments on an old blog of hers. She could have easily said, like she did months ago, apologized, I had some weird views before, I've evolved, everything's fine. Now they have a journalist who hosts a television show about news and politics who appears to be a liar. That's a major problem for a journalistic
Is she going
endeavor.
back on the air tomorrow? She's on the weekend.
They have not made an announcement. I actually checked right before we came on, because it is Friday and they can make an announcement. Tucker, in the last 48 hours, Huffington Post, The Atlantic, Daily Beast, and The Nation, all those crazy far-right entities, they've all disavowed this hacking claim.
So what are the other anchors? I worked on that channel, and I know a lot of them I like a lot. I like Rachel Maddow, for example. Hate to admit it, but I do.
No, she's a
nice
great
person,
show.
actually.
I disagree with her, but it's a quality
But
product.
she's a pretty straightforward person.
Yes.
Has she come out to say anything about this?
Silence over this.
Okay, so there's been no support from the other anchors, but the network executives are supporting.
There's no, what the network executives did is very interesting. So Joy Reid had her own internet cybersecurity consultant put together a dossier, if you will, and NBC News circulated it quietly, though. They didn't put their Peacock brand on it. They didn't do a big public announcement, but they sent it out to a lot of different media critics and media observers so that it could just sort of get into the news, and they could say, well, this is what this cybersecurity expert said. The problem is this cybersecurity expert is starting to look like the Inspector Clouseau of the internet.
Notice.
It's like every single claim that he has made, he hasn't been able to back up with any proof.
Well, so here's the problem for NBC. Because they traffic in the poison that is identity politics, which is a cul-de-sac and will destroy the country, they're now coming under attack from within. People are saying, well, wait, if you're going to fire Joy Reid as a host of color, you've got to fire Tom Brokaw.
Right. Or Brian Williams. Let's not
exactly
forget Brian Williams. I mean, if we're firing people for lying. Well, here's what's interesting. You're also seeing people line up and say, she's a very important African-American woman with a very important and righteous, woke African-American voice on MSNBC. Therefore, we stand by her. They're not making a judgment whether she lied or not, or whether she made those statements. They're just saying we're standing by her because of what she represents.
Because those are secondary considerations.
Let's not forget, this is NBC News, the group that dumped the Access Hollywood tape. A Today Show employee, it appears, is the person who dumped that tape out there. They held it for as long as they could, and then they dumped it right where it would make the most political damage to Donald Trump.
Kind of weird that it went to Noah Oppenheim's friend from college over at the Washington Post. Yeah, he's the head of NBC News.
That's right.
Whatever.
It's a coincidence.
Words
the stars align sometimes.
Larry O'Connor, it's great to see you.
Same here.
I love listening to you. The Central American caravan has arrived at the U.S. border. Hundreds of people eager to settle permanently in the United States, claiming asylum. What happens now? We'll tell you. Stay tuned. Hype and then false reports that it had been stopped, the infamous caravan of Central American migrants has arrived at the U.S.-Mexico border. Hundreds of migrants have arrived at a makeshift settlement in Tijuana, just right across the international border from San Diego. Some may try to sneak across. Others plan to protect themselves at the point of entry and demand asylum in this country. Will it work? How does that work? Thomas Homan is Deputy Director of ICE, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Homan, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So, we know that this group is coming. We've been watching on video for weeks now. Would it be possible, would it be legal to say you are not residents, you have no legal right to come in, no, you can't cross the border?
Well, there's a couple of things we do. First of all, if they're really seeking asylum, they just pass through a safe nation of Mexico. So if it's a matter of leaving Guatemala, Honduras because they're in danger, they went through Mexico, they could very easily claim asylum there. So I don't know if this is much claim asylum as it is getting to the United States.
Right. Well, it's clearly a scam, obviously. We know that. But what can we do about it?
Well, Congress needs to take some action. We sent a list of legislative fixes and loopholes they need to address. For instance, the thresholds on claiming fear are so low. You know, nearly 90% of people that claim fear will get a reasonable fear yes from CIS because the thresholds are so low. Then they go see a judge. If they ever show up to see a judge, those approvals are much lower, like 30%. So we need to fix that. And we need to move those hearings up in front of an immigration judge so they have that formal hearing. Most of them do not get fear finding because they don't have a credible case to present. and they need to be quickly removed.
So how does it work? So anybody can just show up at the border without papers and say, I'm in fear for my life, or I'm afraid in some way, and then they're let into the United States?
Well, they're held, and they will be interviewed by Citizenship and Immigration Services. But that's another loophole. If they're a family unit, which most of these people are, we have the Ninth Circuit decision that says we can only detain family units up to 20 days. So, you know, they can't possibly have a hearing from a judge that quick, so they eventually be released.
Into the United States?
Yes. So we've asked Congress to look at that. It's called the Florida Settlement Agreement. We want them to address that legislatively. So if they close these loopholes, we can control the border. Look, last year we had a 45-year low in border crossings because this president's taken border security seriously. He has let ICE and the fine men and women of the Border Patrol do their jobs. But then the smugglers figure out these loopholes, and now they're using these loopholes against us. So Congress needs to act and close these loopholes so we can do our job and secure the border.
So as long as you claim fear, you cannot be immediately deported. You're released into the United States after.
If you claim fear and you get interviewed and you can pass a very low threshold and most of these people are being trained and taught what to say by groups down in Mexico, come in and make that claim, we cannot remove you. Those claims have to be adjudicated.
So we're basically helpless. I mean, we've hamstrung ourselves, it sounds like.
Again, if we fix the loopholes, we'd be in a lot better position. For instance, the adults we are detaining until they see a judge, but the family units are the big issue, and that's what most of these people are. They're the family units or the children, who we have certain court decisions that limit what we can do, how long we can detain them. That's what needs to be fixed, and we presented that to representatives on the Hill months ago. So if they really want to address this migration, they can simply help us and close these loopholes.
Yeah, I bet they don't want to. Mr. Sherman, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Enrique Acevedo is an anchor at Univision, and he joins us tonight. Enrique, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Tucker.
So you all have a reporter embedded in this caravan, is that correct?
Yes. No offense, but we like to report on the news from the field instead of a studio or behind the news desk in Washington or in Miami or New York.
Quite intrepid of you, Enrique. So that's kind of getting to my question, which is, of all the things happening in this country, and there are a lot, why this little caravan? Why is this at the center of your news coverage? Why do you think it merits an embedded reporter?
You know, we never covered the caravan before. It happens almost every year. We did this year after President Trump wrote a series of tweets about it, and it became a national news story. And we wanted to see what was happening firsthand. That's why we sent a correspondent, and that's why he's been following that caravan for weeks now.
Interesting. Now, during the course of your coverage, did your correspondent ever ask people in the caravan the obvious question, which is, if you're fleeing Honduras because you're afraid to live there and you're searching for asylum, you're in Mexico, which is a pretty safe country, I would assume. Why wouldn't you ask for asylum in Mexico?
You are a very intelligent man, Tucker, and I just heard Director Homan said Mexico is a safe country. And now that I'm hearing you repeat that, it's concerning. Mexico had the most violent year in decades. In 2017, more than 26,000 murders. I wouldn't call that a safe country. If they're actually fleeing violence,
well, thank you for agreeing with me, because, of course, I've been making that point for the last year.
They could go to.
Right. So if it's such a dangerous country filled with so many violent people, why would we let any of them into our country? I mean, we have millions of Mexican citizens living in America right now. If you're right up against a country that's totally out of control, as people are shooting each other in the numbers you just described, why wouldn't you be terrified to let them in?
Well, I think you're not getting the criminals. You're getting the best of Mexico, the people who are willing to work 2 or 3 shifts a day, the people who are law-abiding citizens and are proactive enough to try to provide a better future for their family, the people who are fleeing that violence. That's what you're getting, not rapists and criminals like President Trump suggested.
But we don't know that, of course, because we have more than 10... No, actually we don't, because we don't know if they are.
According to the data, you've seen the data, they're less prone to commit crimes than native-born citizens.
Hold on, there are no data, because we don't allow, thanks to advocacy from people like you, the question of citizenship to be asked in the census forms. And we don't actually know the identities of the more than 10 million people here illegally because they're using fake documents. So we really don't know anything about them, as you know. There's no national survey of illegals. So why shouldn't we be worried about that?
You shouldn't be worried because statistics say, and it's very clear, that immigrants are less likely to commit crimes than native-born citizens. That's a fact. And the overwhelming majority, I don't know why we have to keep debating this. It's a fact. The overwhelming majority of immigrants in this country are law-abiding, hardworking people.
Oh, no, but we're not debating that. And I've never disagreed with that. I think immigrants are great, actually. I like immigrants, Mexican immigrants, Honduran immigrants, all immigrants. I just think that if you have an incredibly violent, one of the most violent countries in the world, a poor country with remarkably low education levels,
well, it's
and
not
you
a poor
decide,
country. It's
hold on,
one of the
and
10
you
largest
decide that
economies in the world.
we're going to let in every poor person from this undeveloped, violent, badly educated country into our country, it's hard to see why you would do that and expect that you're going to profit from it, and we haven't. This is the thing.
Mexico is one of the 10 largest economies in the world, so it's not a poor country or an underdeveloped country.
Then why are people leaving? Why are millions of people leaving if it's... Wait, so you're saying it's violent and poor, that's why people are coming, but it's not violent and poor. It's great.
Tucker, I wasn't saying it wasn't violent. It is violent. It had over 26,000 murders last year. It's not poor. It's one of the 10 largest economies in the world. People are coming over here because, behind that 700-mile wall that it's already built, there's a big sign that says help wanted. And entire industries here in the U.S. depend on that cheap labor. So as long as there's, and you know this about supply and demand, as long as there's a demand for these jobs, people are going to come to this country.
But no, Tyson's Chicken is not actually in charge of America. We have a government, citizens elect legislators to pass laws, and we've done that. They get to decide. Big employers don't get to make our policies. American citizens do. It's one of the things that's different between the U.S. and Mexico. This is a democracy. And our laws say they're not allowed to be here. And you're arguing that our laws are worthless and the opinions of American citizens don't mean anything. That's what you're arguing. And you can see why we present that, can't you?
I wouldn't argue that laws are not necessary or that rule of law is not a fundamental part of our democracy. Of course it is. I wouldn't argue that Mexico is not a democracy either. Actually, they're going to have an election in 2 months to choose their next president. So that's part of being a democracy. What I would say is that we have to, in order to move forward with a real comprehensive solution, we have to tell the truth to the American people. A weak, unprotected border is not the reason why these people are coming to the U.S. The reason why they're coming to the U.S. is because help is wanted. The economy depends on these jobs. Many industries, the construction, the service industries, they depend on cheap labor.
So what you're saying is the will of big companies is more important than the will of American citizens who would like to control who comes here. They don't think it should be up to employers, chicken plants who comes here, Walmart who comes here. They think they should have a say. And they've passed laws that say they don't want it. Why is that not relevant?
I'm 100% behind you on that. I think we should listen to the will of the American people, and the vast majority of the American people are in favor of comprehensive immigration reform. They're in favor of passing solutions in Congress that help the dreamers. They're in favor of not building a wall. So, yeah, let's listen to the majority of the American people.
You guys are slick over at Univision, I have to say. We have laws on the books, extant laws, in force, that say no one can come here without authorization from the federal government, period. We have, I don't know, 15 million, pick a number, between 10 and 15 million people here illegally, and you think that's cool, and you say you're for the rule of law.
No, you know what, Tucker? I think, and this might surprise you, undocumented immigration is not a desirable outcome for any of the parties involved. These people, they don't want to leave their homes. They don't want to leave behind their families, the places where they were born. I'm sure a lot of people here in the States are asking, why do we have to take them in? The reality is that we agree that undocumented immigration is not a desirable outcome. How we fix that is where we're not on the same page.
Right. Okay. Enrique, it's great to see you tonight. Thank you for coming on. I don't think you've ever been on. It's nice to have you.
Thank you.
Well, the New York Times reporter assigned to Hillary Clinton has a new book out with a portrait of the Clintons that she developed over 10 years of covering them. And she joins us next. Stay tuned. New York Times reporter Amy Chozick spent maybe more time covering Hillary Clinton than any living person. Through 2 presidential campaigns and a decade, she has a new book out. It's called Chasing Hillary, 10 Years, 2 campaigns, 1 intact glass ceiling. Chozick describes a lot about Hillary, her profane tirades against Trump. She notes with wonder how many men accused of sex harassment surrounded Clinton. She also concedes that she was charmed by Hillary a lot of the time. Amy Chozick of the New York Times joins us tonight. Amy, thanks for coming on. So you've taken some grief for this book from the right that says, you concede in the book that you had affinity for Hillary, you share her politics. I just want to say at the outset, I like the fact that you were honest about it, unlike a lot of reporters who's, you sort of have to guess. I thought you were really direct, and I appreciate it. But given that, the Hillary people are always sniping about you and complaining about you like you're the problem. Why? It seems to say a lot about them.
Exactly. Apparently, this is the book that the Clintons don't want you to read. And as you point out, it is partly sympathetic to her. And so I anticipated the blowback. I mean, part of what I get into at the book is that there's no gray area for Hillary Clinton. You're either completely devoted to her or you're an enemy. And, a lot of the times my coverage was in between. And sometimes I wrote some tough stories. I mean, I was the beat reporter covering this campaign day in and day out. And so, there wasn't a lot of gray area. You were either the enemy or you were, completely devoted.
But I mean, how sort of out of it do you have to be, and I know the Clinton people feel this way, to think that like the New York Times is too right-wing to cover Hillary Clinton? I mean, I've heard them, they've said that to me, so I know they actually feel that way.
Oh, absolutely.
What planet are they on?
Well, they're on Planet Hillary, and which I've written about extensively. And one of the themes in the book that I think your viewers will find surprising is this decades-long battle between the New York Times and the Clinton camp. I mean, it was something I was naive about when I was put on the beat in 2013. I hadn't anticipated that her aides would essentially blame me for the Whitewater scandal, which Tucker happened when I was 12. But there's all this, which of course the New York Times broke. There is all this bad blood that has been passed on between the Clintons and the New York Times from generation to generation, of which I was a recipient of, put on her 2016 campaign. I mean, I think it would surprise a lot of people that that animosity exists.
So Chelsea's mad at you and criticizing you on Twitter?
Yes, Chelsea sent about 30 tweets in the past few days criticizing some of my reporting.
Let me ask you a question. So you said in the book, and I think I knew this, that the overwhelming majority of beat reporters covering Hillary are women. Hillary was running a campaign based essentially on the fact that she was a woman. If Orrin Hatch was running for president and like 15 out of 17 reporters covering him were faithful Mormons, you would say, maybe that's not, that's kind of stacking the deck a little bit. Do you see a problem with that arrangement?
That's interesting because one of the things in the book that I point out is like Hillary actually liked the guys, like your very own Ed Henry would grill her about her emails, and then she kind of liked, she liked the banter with him, and she was sort of flirty with some of the guys, and so I don't think that there was a particular like love fest because women were covering her. If anything, I think there was the perception that women might be tougher on her to kind of prove, the counter to your point, to prove that we weren't in the tank.
And she's tough. Is she the first self-described feminist you've ever met harder on women than she is on men?
I cannot answer that question.
But I think we both know. Amy Chozick of the New York Times, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Great to talk to you.
Well, in the state of Utah, college students can now retreat to what they're calling a cry closet to weep during finals because college is really hard. Does America need more cry closets? Liberal Sherpa Kathy Aru makes the case for cry closets. Next. College students tend to get stressed out by finals, but if you attend the University of Utah, you have an option. It's called the Cry Closet. The closet is a creation of an art student called Nemo Miller, and it exists for stressed out students who can step into it for up to 10 minutes of crying to help cope with the tests. The closet interior includes fuzzy stuffed animals for maximum coping. Question is it time to go national with this? Weeping wardrobes erected across this fragile country. Only one woman can make the case for that, and she is, of course, Kathy Aru, the founding publisher of Catalina Magazine, and our liberal Sherpa. Kathy, it's great to see you tonight.
Hey, good to see you.
So at first glance, it seems a little confusing because college, of course, is the least stressful place there is. I mean, it's already a yoga ritual. Well, sure. I mean, you go to class for 2 hours a week and get drunk the rest of the time.
Oh, come on. That's
Why are
not
college
everyone's
students
experience.
crying?
No, it's very stressful. They're learning. They're the future. These are citizens of tomorrow. And they're learning as much as they can. They're as stressed as can be, so they need psychological health. They need this bioenergetic way to get out their stress. They need 10 minutes of a good cry and a cry closet to then be prepared to take those exams from everything they've learned in those classes. So,
we don't have time for you to define bioenergetic on the show, so I'm going to let that pass. I'll email you later.
Thank you.
But Does this suggest something maybe about the fragility of their mental health? I mean, if you're so stressed about taking some dumb test at some dumb school, doesn't that mean that you're kind of on the edge of a breakdown?
Well, no, don't we all need a good old-fashioned cry? This is all it's saying. This is an old-fashioned remedy to a modern-day problem. It's just about crying, 10 minutes of crying. Everyone needs a stress ball. Many people own stress balls, so this is just an interpretation of a giant stress ball.
So let's say we had a war. Let's say, I don't know, pick a country, China, challenged us in some way where we had to mobilize a large number of Americans to defend the homeland.
Okay.
But everyone's crying. Would anybody be left to fight the war? I mean, can you really defend a country if you're encouraging kids to cry about final exams?
Well, this is about psychological health. So if everyone takes a moment aside to just center themselves, ground themselves, have a cry maybe for 2-3 minutes, and then go fight that war, I'm sure the war would be won with people in such a great state of mind.
Could you take a break conceivably between battles to cry?
Well, I think the break would probably have to be done before the battle, but they would be in the right mindset before that battle that they would win that battle. So I think that's what this whole closet is about, the cry closet. It's about getting that right state of mind. So, yeah.
Would you want to use a closet others have cried in?
I don't think I'd have a problem with it. It sounds very cozy, and Google has done this out in Silicon Valley. So many companies have created these ping pong tables and very comfortable corporate settings where people can let off steam. So
if a cry closet is called for, how about like a petting zoo? Like a bunny stroking station? Is that too far, or could you envision that?
You know, it's the future. If people are comfortable and work better after being centered and calmer, then why not? Bring the bunnies in, yes.
Let me just ask you a macro point, and we haven't talked about this, I don't want to shock you or anything, but like I thought the whole idea was to get people to come out of the closet. But here you're looking right in the camera and saying, people go back in the closet. Do you as a progressive feel good about that?
Go in for 10 minutes and get that cry so that you can come out confidently and feel good. I mean, you might want to go into that cry closet right before show and, you know, have a great show afterwards.
I mean, I know this is like television, you don't want to be too honest, but let's try to push the level
I'm always
of
honest with you.
If you knew a man who you thought, I could date that man or marry that man, I find that man attractive, and he said, I'm sorry, I just got to take a quick break and go cry in a closet while squeezing a stuffed animal, that would kind of wreck the deal for you, wouldn't it, honestly?
I think he would probably say, I'm going to go center myself so that I can be a stronger, better person for you. Yeah, I would love that person. I think that's great. I think that's healthy. Who doesn't want to be with the healthy person?
Part of you would look on contemptuously and say, you weepy little freak, stop crying, right?
I would say, what a strong person who understands themselves or herself or whatever pronoun that person wishes to call themselves.
I don't believe you. I don't believe you for a second.
Yeah.
I think you'd want to think that just as a good progressive. You would think this is wholesome, this is consistent with my ideology.
No,
but on a gut level, you would say, stop whimpering.
Every place has a cry closet. Every place has a safe place. I mean, cry closets can be the bathroom right now at many companies. Everyone needs a good cry closet. It's an old-fashioned way of letting out stress and relieving tension. Yep.
I'm going to leave it there.
Okay.
Kathy Aru, the Liberal Sherpa, great to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Well, this week marked an anniversary on this show. We like to commemorate anniversaries. Time passes. We like to stop and describe what has just happened. So we will. We'll be right back.